So today I wanted to welcome
Thank
you.
you for technology.
Oh, yes, thank you. I wanted to welcome Joni Kamlet to the Cancer-Free Canine Facebook stage. I call it the stage just from our summit that we had last year. She is an RVT and a canine rehabilitation specialist, RVT, but also has been in the holistic space for a decade, right?
Well, actually, longer than that.
That's what I thought. Years. I wasn't sure.
Yeah, almost 25 years now. Yeah.
25 years. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
She currently lives in Berkeley, California, but she's moving away. She's getting out of California in the next few days. So super soon.
Yeah. Yep.
Hitting the road, taking a new adventure, joining the farm living.
Yeah, me and my little dog Scruffy are driving cross country. So yeah.
That's a big drive in the summer.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
She refused the pet carrier. Scruffy was not getting on an airplane, so we're driving.
Oh, that's why you're driving. Oh my gosh. Well, that'll be an adventure. You get to see from coast to coast, America. So that'll be fun. That'll be great fun. So you've been with Real Mushrooms for how long?
Well, actually, not super long. I started January 1st of this year.
Oh,
I know. And I've been working with mushrooms since 2020, since January of 2020. And I don't know, for those that don't know, Real Mushrooms is the retail side of a company called NAMX, which is the North American Medicinal Mushroom Exchange. And that was a company started by Jeff Chilton many years ago. And they provide mushroom extracts to supplement companies around the country. And so I was working for a supplement company that was using the NAMX mushrooms. And honestly, I just became obsessed with mushrooms. It just took over my life. The more I learned about them, the more I wanted to learn. And when it was actually funny, we were doing a webinar with Jeff Chilton, who is owns NAMX, and he mentioned that his son Sky Chilton was going to be starting a veterinary line with Real Mushrooms. And as soon as I heard that, I wasn't working in the veterinary field at the time. I wanted to get back into veterinary, and I wanted to explore how mushrooms worked with dogs and cats. And so I kind of campaigned for the job. I reached out to Sky, and anyway, they said yes. I was so excited about the opportunity to work with Dr. Rob Silver. And, when I found out that he was also working with Real Mushrooms, I made them hire me.
That's such a cool opportunity. Now, you used to be a rep for Standard Process.
Standard Process, yeah. And so I worked with Standard Process for a decade. So that's probably where you got the 10 years. But I was in hands-on, working in practice, hands-on, before that. And then in integrative, an interest in integrative veterinary medicine that led me to go back to school, in my late 30s. I'm in my 60s now. Like when I became a registered veterinary technician, it was specifically to go into integrative veterinary medicine. So I've never done anything. I've worked in Western practices, of course, but my interest has always been holistic options for animals. Yeah.
That's amazing. So how did that interest embed in you? Like, how did you get on the holistic bandwagon?
That's a great question. I'm an ovarian cancer survivor. I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer in 1996. And at the time, I was not living a holistic lifestyle. Well, I had actually just started to. I was a bartender for over a decade, not living I actually dropped out of college, became a bartender, and was just living the opposite of a holistic lifestyle. And then kind of shifted course I'll just tell you the whole story. I moved to an ashram, and while I was at the ashram, learning about yoga and meditation, I got the cancer diagnosis, and they removed an 18-centimeter cyst that encapsulated my right ovary. And I had said to them, unless you know it's absolutely for sure that it's cancer, don't take anything else. So initially they didn't think it was cancer, and they closed me back up because most cysts are not cancerous, but mine turned out to be cancerous, and they wanted to go back in and do a complete hysterectomy and stage me from my diaphragm, figure out what stage cancer, take tissue from my diaphragm all the way down to my bowel, and then do chemo and radiation. And I didn't know anything about holistic anything, but something inside me just said no. I just said no, and I didn't know what I was going to do. But I was living at this in this community where people would come to do yoga retreats, and they were like acupuncturists and herbalists and Ayurveda practitioners, et cetera. And I just, I had to sign an AMA, signing against medical advice that I was not going to follow, my doctor's instructions. And I went and I took a crash course in learning what I could do. And so I did everything. I did a macrobiotic diet, raw food, veganism, Ayurveda. I mean, you name the treatment, and I tried it. And my dog was diagnosed with mammary cancer at the same time.
Oh my God.
We were both going through this diagnosis. And so I started kind of trying out with her things that I was learning with myself, because back then, there weren't any raw food diets, that didn't really exist. Actually, the first one, Sojourner Farms, I don't know if anyone remembers that, started doing that. And I found a homeopathic vet named Dr. Barbara Fischelson, who was actually in California. I started working with her. I was in Virginia at the time. And my dog Waffles, we both improved. And anyway, it's 25 years later now, and I'm still here. I still have my leftover. And, I have to say though, it could vary. I never got staged. It could very well be they caught me in the very, very early stages, and that the surgery was curative. We'll never know, but what it did was it sparked this interest. And then when I moved to California, the vet I was working with, I found an integrative vet, and one that did all kinds of different integrative medicine, Dr. Jenny Taylor, my mentor. And she's like, Joni, you should go to school and become an RBT, and I'll hire you and I'll start teaching you. And so that's what I did. So it's kind
that's
of
an amazing story, Joni. That's crazy. And I'm so glad I have you live today on the Cancer Free Canine page. How did Waffles turn out?
She did great. She lived 8 years with the mammary cancer. And, it was this it was a tumor that it was, it wasn't huge when I first discovered it, but it was, I guess the size of a, not quite golf ball size, but it was, maybe a half a golf ball sized. And it would shrink. And when it would, and then I started, I was raw feeding and, kind of learning, again, it was very, we know so much more now. We have these amazing veterinarians like Karen Becker and Lori Koger and Kendra Pope, and, that have done, that have done so much with, with learning how to help us take care of our animals. But she lived 8 years. And then one day, just out of the blue, within a week, it grew significantly. And at that point, she was 18. And so I for at that point, I didn't want to do surgery or anything. And it was a quality of life issue. And we just enjoyed what time we had. Yeah. So.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, 18.
Yeah.
Joni, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I want to know what you did for her. I mean, back in the 90s, like 96, and that you were this proactive, having this much success. It's so exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll tell you, homeopathy was, I almost exclusively used homeopathy with her. And, I worked with a classical homeopath who really it takes a lot of time. And when you work with classical homeopathy, they recommend you don't do a lot of other stuff. So, again, I have to think back, but I really just kind of followed what my veterinary homeopath told me to do. And, but of course, doing the raw feeding, I remember then when grizzly salmon oil came out, finding the salmon oil at the pet food store. I remember adding that, and as other kind of supplements started to come out, including those, I was giving her, green foods and stuff like that as well. I think Vitamineral Green back then. Now you can go in the grocery store, the Whole Foods, and there's like whole shelves of options. There just wasn't that back then. And
I know,
no mushrooms. I knew nothing about
mushrooms. That's what I was wondering, because a lot of people thought mushrooms were dangerous for dogs. Everybody thought mushrooms were poisonous.
Yeah.
And so talk to us about mushrooms.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to say, I would consider myself a beginner, but a very enthusiastic beginner. And I'm so lucky that now, I get to full-time work with mushrooms. This is like the job of my dreams, because I get to read about mushrooms and write about mushrooms and talk about mushrooms. And the real expert is Dr. Rob Silver, Dr. Eeyore Basco, amazing veterinarian who's been working with mushrooms for decades. Dr. Barbara Fougere, who wrote Veterinary Herbal Medicine. She's been doing a lot of work with mushrooms and just did a wonderful webinar for the College of Integrative Veterinary Therapies, CIVT, which I highly recommend. And so I'm going to do my best to talk about mushrooms, but anything that there might be things I don't know, and I would recommend, really following up with them. You should have them on Cancer-Free Canine.
I would love to. Well, and I'm hoping I can do another summit towards the end of the year. Now that my Wi-Fi is getting better and better. For a while, my Wi-Fi was totally awful when I moved out.
Yeah.
I'm like 72 miles from Lake Tahoe. And so I didn't think the Wi-Fi would do this touch and go, but so far so good.
Yeah, no, you're okay. To answer your question about, tell you about mushrooms. I mean, there's so many cool things about mushrooms. I mean, they are like I said, the more I learn about them, the more I want to learn. And it's wonderful, because I started learning about them, and then Fantastic Fungi came out, and everyone started learning. I encourage people to watch that movie. It's on Netflix, to learn a whole lot of really cool stuff about mushrooms. But some interesting things like the mushrooms have their own kingdom, the kingdom fungi. So mushrooms are not plants, and they're not animals. They're their own kingdom. And their mushrooms are they're older than anything else. And mushrooms actually have more in common with humans and animals than they do with plants. Like, we share a whole lot of DNA with mushrooms. And so if we were to compare what's closest, it would be us rather than plants, which fascinates me. And
I had no idea.
Yeah.
I had no idea. Wow.
Yeah.
That makes me feel kind of bad for eating them.
No, because I wouldn't go there. I truly feel like mushrooms are here. Like, mushrooms are gonna save the planet. I mean, there are mushrooms that, in Chernobyl that are, eating the radiation. There are mushrooms that eat plastic. There are mushrooms that, you can make clothing with mushrooms. You can, there's just a myriad of things that you can do with mushrooms, which is also fascinating. But how they interact with us, it's like mushrooms. I know I'm going to sound really Berkeley, a little woo-woo, but it's almost like there's a communication that happens when we consume mushrooms or animals. It opens up a communication with the natural world and provides, in my opinion, something that we've been missing. As hunters and gatherers, we used to eat mushrooms on a regular basis, and they were part of our diet. And then as we became more industrialized, we moved away from mushrooms. But, they provide, like immunomodulating benefits. So they help the body stay in homeostasis. All mushrooms do this. Mushrooms are anti-inflammatory. They're anti, most of them are anti-neoplastic, anti-cancer. They're antiviral, many of them are antibacterial. When we or an animal ingests mushrooms, and I guess the best way I like to describe this is, so we all know there's poisonous mushrooms out there, and unfortunately that's many veterinarians, that's their first introduction to mushrooms, is when an animal eats, an amanita, death cap mushroom, and is in the emergency room. So that's also the reason many veterinarians are a little wary of mushrooms, and this education, is slowly getting out there to them. But because there are mushrooms that are poisonous, and going back to the beginning of time, our DNA remembers that. And so when we ingest a mushroom or an animal ingests a mushroom, there's a message that the body receives. And that message is, I'm not a threat, but I could be. And so how are your defenses? And so the body goes into this kind of checklist, okay, are your natural killer cells ready to go? Are your macrophages and, all the different immune
responses.
That are alerted when mushrooms are consumed. And
I didn't realize that. So the body actually is like friend or foe.
Exactly. And
then it, interesting.
And then it kind of almost does like a checklist. And so wherever the body is like maybe lagging in the immune support department, whatever immune support is needed is sent in that area. And the mushrooms, in particular in the form of the beta glucans, allow this facilitate this happening. And it's fascinating. And so, even more fascinating is that their mushrooms are called biological response modifiers. So it will lower an overactive immune system and increase an underactive immune system. So, and there's really no downside. I mean, mushrooms are functional foods. They're not herbs. They're not medicines unless they're extra. Some mushrooms actually do act like medicines, like immunity, which is an extract of from the mycelium of turkey tail. But when we ingest mushrooms, either by cooking or taking them in supplement form, it's really more like taking a whole food. So and again, and I should have said this in the beginning, I'm not a veterinarian. I'm not allowed to diagnose or prescribe. These are just my opinions. So when I talk about this, I encourage anyone who's if you're working with an integrative vet, always check with them before like increasing a dosage of something or adding something. These are just suggestions. I can't give specific medical advice. And I'll say that mushrooms are extremely safe. The mushrooms that are the medicinal mushrooms that are not poisonous are very safe, and in many cases can be taken in pretty high doses.
So Joni, I love the fact that it's immunomodulating. Like if you have a histamine response in an animal, it's not going to mess with that. If you have an animal with low vitality and is struggling, it's going to help that. It's great for cancer. And I'm a big believer in doctrine of signatures, and mushrooms look like tumors. And so I think it resonates with tumors because it looks so much like that. So I think you're absolutely amazing. I want to call you a fun gal. I have to throw my mushroom joke in there.
There you go.
You fun guy. But so when it comes to mushrooms, what about medication? So can you mix them with medication, or do you need to be careful there?
Yeah. Again, always check with your veterinarian, but there are very few contraindications. One of the benefits of mushrooms is particularly like turkey tail and reishi, who are two very popular mushrooms that are used with cancer, can be used in conjunction with chemotherapy. So, and in fact, mushrooms can sometimes help mitigate some of the negative effects of the chemotherapy.
That was turkey tail, and I'm going to put it in the chat.
Yeah, reishi. And reishi. And I'll also say to your previous mentioning about how the immune different things that mushrooms can do. The reishi also has antihistamine qualities. So reishi would be a mushroom that would be interesting to consider for mast cell cancer. And as far as like low energy, there are certain mushrooms that act as adaptogens and that will support increasing energy, like cordyceps. So all mushrooms share a lot of similarity in their actions, and that can sometimes be very challenging when you're trying to figure out which mushroom to use for this or that. I mean, it confuses me. But there are certain specific mushrooms that are kind of go-to mushrooms for certain things. Lion's mane, for instance, which is my very favorite mushroom. And actually the doctrine of signatures, it looks like a brain, and it's excellent for anything neurologic, great for brain and cognition. Traditionally used for the gut though. That's how they've only discovered the neurotropic effects and the neurologic effects of lion's mane just in the past, I'd say the past decade or so. Traditionally, it was always used for gut support, and it also has anti-neoplastic or anti-cancer qualities. So, chaga is also another great mushroom that has, anti-cancer properties. Although I will say, and it's unfortunate, there are very, very few clinical studies in dogs, very few. So, at this point, most of the information that we have is anecdotal, which isn't the best, but it's all we have. And real mushrooms, for instance, we're hoping to do some clinical studies, some safety studies to start with, working with turkey tail to see going higher and higher doses so that we can more and more comfortably support people using turkey tail for dogs with cancer and say, yes, you can give, this dosage safely. But we're also going to hopefully be doing studies on the whole turkey tail, like the whole mushroom as opposed to just the extract.
I'm so grateful that you said that, because I will see turkey tail growing locally.
Yeah.
And I'm terrified. Like I want to pull it off and do something with it, but I'm like, I don't know. I'm pretty nervous about that.
Yeah.
So would you recommend people foraging their own mushrooms to feed to their dogs? No,
Never.
I wouldn't
Absolutely
either. It
not.
scares the heck out of me.
No, I would
Yeah.
never do that. I would never, ever, ever, unless you're an expert mycologist, never, ever give forage mushrooms to your dog. There's so many mushrooms that look similar. I mean, one of the things I've become obsessed with is foraging. So I go out, like when it rains, I get very excited because I know that, and I can go out looking for mushrooms. And it's actually the reason I bought property in Virginia and I'm moving there because I want to go look for mushrooms there. But even still, like if I find something, even if it's like something that's very obviously what I think it is, I will still go and there's a whole bunch of Facebook like identification pages, mushroom identification pages. I'll post it there. I'll get 10 people to confirm to me that that is in fact what it is. Then I'll look at my mushroom books and then I'll still be nervous cooking it. I don't know if I'll ever get over that, but,
Oh, good.
But for a pet, no.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Don't want to do that.
I'm glad you feel the same way because I've seen friends go out and like pick mushrooms and I'm all, I don't know about that. Like
No, I would never
the worst
recommend
case
that.
scenario is death. So I'm
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
exactly.
And like I said, so many look alike. And just in respect to what you're saying about turkey tail, how do you know it's turkey tail? Like there's false turkey tail. There's other mushrooms that look similar. Like you have to, and just a little pearl here. When you are foraging, if you do want to have your mushroom identified, you want to take a look at the mushroom, like, the top of the mushroom, but it's always important to turn it upside down and photograph the bottom. Does it have gills? Does it have pores? Does it have teeth? Turkey tail, for instance, it should be white underneath and it should kind of look like it has, I think it's pores. I think I'm right there. But there's other mushrooms that look almost identical from the top, but then when you turn them over, they're going to look different underneath. And so,
oh my gosh, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, my dog actually ate some mushrooms in my pasture, some chocolate brown looking mushrooms with pink gills. And I could not find anybody to identify it. I just had to keep Googling what it was as I'm shoving hydrogen peroxide down him, going, he's still alive, he's still okay. Here's some homeopathy. Here's some hydrogen peroxide. And he came out of it okay, but he was obsessed with these chocolate brown mushrooms, like would run out in the horse pasture and find them. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm on the phone to the vet. It's super scary, you guys.
It is. And I encourage everybody, because especially right now in California, the death cap mushroom, the Amanita phalloides, I think I'm saying it correctly, are popping up all over. And a veterinarian that I used to work for, many years ago, she bought a new property. She bought a house and her dog went in the backyard and ate, ate death cap mushrooms and did not, like a dog will not survive that. So it's always a good idea to know what they look like. And if you see them, get them out of your yard. I just got a text because everybody sends me mushroom pictures. I get pictures because everyone knows I'm obsessed. And I have a friend that just yesterday sent me a picture of like, look at this cool mushroom I'm, in my friend's yard. And it was a death cap. And this friend had a dog. I'm like, yeah, go out there and pull them all up. So yeah.
If you have Amanita growing in your yard, is it dangerous to pull it up? Should you be wearing gloves and things like that?
No.
Okay.
It's fine to touch them, and I do not recommend this. It's actually fine to put them in your mouth. You would never do that. Some mycologists kind of do that as a party trick. It has to there has to be an interaction, I think, with the saliva or something like that. So as long as you don't swallow and you spit it out and you make sure everything gets out of your mouth, again, don't do this at home, don't do it. But all this to say that you don't have to wear gloves or anything like that.
Okay.
You can, just to be extra safe, but they're not going to hurt you unless they're actually ingested. Yeah.
Okay, good to know. Now, can you combine a bunch of mushrooms together? Like I see people throw the kitchen sink at their dog.
Yeah.
And also, how young should you start? Like, should we be proactive and start feeding for prevention?
Yes.
Or do we wait until we see something?
Yeah, these are great questions. First of all, I'll talk to the synergy of mushrooms working together. Dr. Barbara Fougere, the veterinarian that I mentioned earlier on, just in her most recent webinar on mushrooms, she really promoted the benefit she's seeing from mushrooms working together. How working with a single mushroom is great, but she's seeing more results in her patients when she's combining mushrooms. So like, for instance, the document that I sent you that Dr. Silver put together, which, like I said, you're welcome to share however we figure out how to share them with the group.
Yes.
And thank you, Doc Rob, for putting this together and generously sharing it with us. He actually put mushroom pairings in that document. He talks about turkey tail, for instance, and then he has a little area where, you want to pair turkey tail with so-and-so for a virus, or for or for instance, for cancer, a turkey tail and reishi are a great combo. So I'm a big fan of using mushrooms in combination, and I'm a bigger fan of proactively using mushrooms, and we should all be on mushrooms, not just our pets. We should as well. Mushrooms are, and I'll say mushrooms should be used in conjunction with a robust protocol that includes diet, herbs, exercise, all if you have a dog with cancer, for instance, I wouldn't recommend just using mushrooms. You want to make sure that you've got a really well-rounded protocol. And mushrooms are not an immediate, they don't work immediately. They work best over time. And for that reason, I recommend just being on mushrooms daily, every day. I think all people and all dogs should be on some form of mushrooms daily. And, if I talking about like real mushrooms products, we have a product called 5 Defenders, which is reishi, turkey tail, shiitake, maitake, and chaga. And so what I love about that combination of 5 mushrooms is that they cover all the bases. They cover digestion. They cover, they have an antihistamine effect. They're anti-inflammatory. Shiitake, and again, this is just there are no animal studies, but shiitake is good for the teeth and gums. I was very excited when I learned that, and would love to see more. I would love to see studies on dogs and dental health, or dogs and oral cancer with shiitake. Again, this is just me and my brain going, wow, this is cool. I wonder how it works. I'm not saying that that shiitake is going to cure any kind of oral cancer or help the gums. It's just, there is research showing that shiitake has an affinity for orodental issues. So yeah,
that's so interesting. I love that it's still totally emerging, that we are finding new things all the time, that this is new science. What about the mycelium? There's a lot of debate about mycelium.
Yeah. And so, the mycelium versus what they call the fruiting body. There are, so how do I'm trying to figure out where to start here.
I'm going to start you. I'm going to help. Because
thank you.
I noticed when I was taking certain mushroom products that I was having a yeast growth, and I was just like, what is going on? And so I dove into studying about mycelium a little bit, found out that it's grown on, a lot of commercial myceliums are grown on grain. And then they pulverize the whole thing.
Yeah.
Okay, all of them. And they
All of them.
pulverize it and they put it in a product and call it pure mushrooms or something like that. And I literally had a yeast infection come from that. So then I was like, fruiting body only fruiting body. But now I'm hearing new things about mycelium because people are like, mycelium's inert, it's polluted. Help me out here.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you, Poppy. And so first of all, just a little bit of mushroom anatomy, okay? Or I should say fungi anatomy, because there are 3 parts to a fungi, okay? There is the mushroom, which is also called the fruiting body. That part that comes up above ground, that's actually the only thing that's a mushroom, okay? Then there's the spore, which is the reproductive, like the mushroom releases the spore, which is the reproductive part of that fungi. And then there's the mycelium, which is the underground network of that fungal organism, okay? Now, mycelium is not a mushroom. That's, and so we're just gonna start with semantics here. And one of the challenges is that there's, and one of my biggest challenges is that there's so many supplement companies out there that have mycelium products that are calling them mushrooms. And so the first thing I'll say is that those products are not mushroom products. They're mycelium products or mycelium on grain products. I'm not saying those products are bad. I'm saying that they're not mushrooms. And what I wish is that we come to a place where we call it what it is. Like, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with those products. I'm saying that they're not mushrooms. And so one of the reasons that I work for Real Mushrooms is because we use mushrooms only, which again, people refer to as the fruiting body. But I know, like, it would be great if we just called mushrooms mushrooms and didn't have to like specify that they're fruiting bodies, because that's all it is. It's just that's the part of the fungi is the mushroom. Now, the issue with mycelium, and one of the reasons that I wanted to work with mushrooms as opposed to mycelium is because almost all the traditional uses of mushrooms, dating back thousands of years, they use the mushroom. And I'd say 90% of the clinical studies work with the mushroom. There are also some very, very interesting and promising studies, exciting studies on mycelium. So I think there's tremendous benefit for mycelium. Turkey tail is like immunity that people use for the turkey tail product for cancer. That's an extract. The mycelium is extracted in broth. And it's a very specific part of that mycelium, either the PSP or the PSK. And it's almost like they make it into a drug, and it's a patented thing that they do. That's great. There's lion's mane. There are some very exciting studies on lion's mane mycelium and supporting the myelin sheath. So that can be helpful for dogs with degenerative myelopathy and other neurologic conditions. And the problem, what you're describing, mushrooms are very hard to grow. They require a lot of time to grow. They require a ton of space to grow. And when you make mushroom supplements in the way that we make them, you grow a whole bunch of mushrooms and then you hot water, you make extracts. You don't just grind up those mushrooms. You put them in hot water and you put them through an extraction process. Some mushrooms go through what's called a dual extraction process, which is they go through hot water and then they go through alcohol. Then that water is dehydrated down into a powder. And then that powder is made into a supplement. So think about how much mushroom you need to make that powder. It's a tremendous amount. And most companies like—
I had no idea, Joni.
Yeah, so
I had no idea that the mushroom powder was actually a water. a
Yeah,
water-based
water or
dehydrated
dual
extract.
extracted, and they do water, they'll do alcohol extraction. It depends on what you want, what you're trying to get out of the mushrooms. There's certain terpenes and triterpenes that you need to get out that doesn't come out in water. It will only come out with the alcohol. But this is a very long, tedious process requiring a massive amount of mushrooms. And to be quite honest, if you tried to do this in the United States, it would be impossible. It would those bottles would end up costing thousands of dollars, first of all, and you just don't have the time and space. So what companies do, mycelium is very easy to, it grows a lot quicker. And so what they do is they inject the spores into what they call a substrate, which is often a grain. It can be oats or it can be rice. And they eject the spores in there, and the mycelium starts growing into that. It sometimes looks like a block of oats or rice or whatever they decide to, whatever they use. And, it's like fingers that are growing all in through there. And the problem is there's no way to separate that mycelium from the grain that it's growing in. It's impossible. So when the mycelium is ready to harvest, and maybe some mushroom will have popped up then, and so sometimes it'll say, the mushroom and the mycelium, it's just a little bit of mushrooms popped up. But what they do is then they grind up that substrate that has the mycelium in it, but it also has all the starch as well. And so they call it mycelium on grain or MOG. And a lot of companies, that's what a lot of companies are doing. And if a mushroom says, unfortunately, if it's grown in the US, because I get asked this question all the time, like, why aren't your mushrooms grown in the US? Well, this is why. We just, and you have to make choices about what's more important to you. And I'm very confident in our growing techniques and our testing for everything. We test for, we grow our mushrooms in China. I'm just going to say it, in rural, in the mountains in rural China. And we've had relationships with growers for decades. And Jeff Chilton, who is the founder of the Namex, our parent company, he set up the organic certification process. He was instrumental in identifying fake mushrooms in the marketplace. I mean, we are quality obsessed. But back to the mycelium, it's like I'm not saying that myceliated grain product isn't beneficial at all. I'm just saying that I just wish they would
be honest about the labeling,
about what it is. And if you have, for instance, a dog that has cancer and is on a ketogenic diet and trying to avoid starch or grains, a lot of companies calling themselves mushroom companies don't even list that it's mycelium on grain. I mean, it's that, and that's where I really get upset. It's like, just say what you are, if you have a good product, and many of the products out there are very good. Say what you have. There's the marketing.
I have kind of a funny story about this. So I am looking for someone in the mushroom industry to interview for a while, Joni, and I'm so grateful that you're hopping on with me today to discuss this honestly, because I reached out to a pretty famous equine mushroom company to see if they would hop on. And I was just like, well, mushrooms can be adulterated and things like that. And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm all, what? And then he quickly, abruptly ended the call. And I was just like, oh, wow, what just happened there? And so thank you for your honesty, because a lot of these companies are calling mycelium on smut as mushrooms, and they aren't really mushrooms.
Yeah. And they could still be, again, I'm not here to bash any product, or company. And I've heard from so many people, like I'm on I'm in a lot of Facebook groups and stuff like that, and people tell me about the wonderful benefits they're getting from their product that is a mycelium on grain product. And I say, great, if it's working for you, if you like it, that's great. I mean, I'm not saying that it's not a good product. It's just,
right.
here's
Just know what you're
buying, and make the choice based on what's most important. Are you trying to avoid starch? Do you want, where are the most clinical studies? Is that mushroom, that even if it's a mushroom fruiting body, is it a mushroom that's been ground up, or is it a mushroom that's been through an extraction process? How many times has it been extracted? Mushrooms can go through the extraction process depending on the mushroom. Sometimes it can be an 8-to-1 extraction, a 10-to-1, very, very, very refined. And one of the reasons that these extracts are so beneficial is because if you were to just take a mushroom and grind it up, mushrooms contain something called chitin, which actually is the same, the shell of insects is made up of chitin. So it almost acts like, it's kind of like what helps the mushroom hold its structure. And the beta glucans are kind of inside those layers of chitin. And in order to get the medicine from the mushrooms, to benefit from mushrooms, whether you're taking them as a supplement or cooking with, or eating them, they have to be heated. And the heating is what kind of releases the beta glucans and all the other beneficial medicine from the mushroom. So, know what you're getting. And also, if you decide to cook, like cooking with mushrooms, if you home cook for your dog, it's amazing. Add mushrooms. Oyster mushrooms are great, are a great mushroom to add, relatively inexpensive. Even button mushrooms are excellent. High in ergothioneine, which is an antioxidant, but you always want to cook your mushrooms.
There you go. That's what I wanted to make sure is they don't just slice mushrooms up in your dog's food or your own food, right?
Right. Well, you just won't get the medicine, and they can, they're cooking them makes them more digestible. And it's one of the, another great thing, like the mushroom powders and everything, they actually are better, or they can be really good when they're cooked. That's why, this is my mushroom tea. I put mushroom powder in hot water and I just mix it up and I drink it all day long. And I just love it.
So Joni, I wanted to ask you about that. Would you do that for your dog too? Would you create a tea? Do you create a massive amount of tea and say, here's yours, here's mine, this is good?
No, not usually. I usually honestly, I just bring my little dog Scruffy. I just, sprinkle the powders in her food, and knock on wood, she has no issues right now. So I alternate through all the different mushrooms with her. But you could a great thing to do for a dog's, you could just mix it in bone broth. If you're making bone broth for your pet, you could either go to the store. Shiitake is great. You can get shiitake mushroom, or like I said, the button mushroom, the oyster mushroom. You can boil those mushrooms to make, in the bone broth, or in hot water to make a tea. The problem with doing it just in hot water is that a lot of these mushrooms, particularly like reishi, are bitter and might not be as palatable for a dog than mixing it like in a bone broth or something like that. Yeah, although lime is really tasty. Yeah.
Well, you gave me a sample of the 5 Defender and I cracked it open and I kind of freaked out because I was just like, is there chocolate in this? And I looked at the bag and I looked at it and I smelled it again. I was just like, wow, that smells amazing. I'm scared to give it to my dog because it smells identical to chocolate. And wow. I didn't want to, I was just like, it doesn't say chocolate on the label. So
it's perfectly safe.
Oh my gosh, it smells absolutely delicious.
Yeah.
Debbie Hull is asking about pregnant dogs. can you give mushrooms to pregnant dogs?
I would avoid, there's no studies, but just like with, I'm always careful with pregnancy with humans or with dogs. I would avoid with pregnancy. And, starting with puppies, I'd probably start at about, 2 months, if you want to start giving mushrooms to your, you can start pretty young, but not younger than that.
Okay, and I love the idea if you're going to make at-home bone broth to throw some mushrooms in there, but would you also take your mushroom powder from real mushrooms and put it in there? Does it have staying power? Okay, so it'll just stay active and it won't dissipate with the bone broth.
No,
that's so cool, Joni.
Better. The only thing about it is that you want to mix it because it'll be heavy. Like when I drink my tea, what I love is I put a bunch of powders in my cup and then I have a frother. Real mushrooms even has their own frother.
No way. That sounds awesome.
And so I pour the hot water and I'm frothing to get all the powder mixed. And invariably, by the time I get to the bottom of the cup, there's the sediment of the mushroom powder at the bottom. So then I just heat some more water, froth it again. And by the end of the day, all the powder that I put in the cup, I've drank. So you just want to make sure if you put it in the bone broth, just make sure if you make a big thing of bone broth, just mix it up pretty well before you give the serving. So you make sure the mushroom's just not on the, sitting there on the bottom. Yeah.
Joni, your skin is absolutely gorgeous.
Really?
And so, I think you look amazing for your age. And so do you put it on topically? I was wondering if you're like, here we go, because mushrooms have this really, not all mushrooms, but some mushrooms have this really silky cap to them. And I was like, I wonder if you're like taking advantage of that.
First of all, thank you, Poppy. But I just, tremella is actually, it's like the skin, it's the skin mushroom. It's also excellent for neurologic issues. But one of ever since starting to work at Real Mushrooms, the company I was at before did not have a tremella product. So I was really excited to try tremella. And so I've been taking 2 capsules a day. And after about maybe 2 weeks, I couldn't stop touching my face because like my skin started like tremella, it like adds moisture or something. And so, and I'm like, no,
what is tremella?
No one's going to notice, but I noticed. So thank you.
What is tremella? Is that a Latin name for a different mushroom?
No, tremella is a mushroom. It's the Latin name is Tremella fuciformis. It's also called the white jelly mushroom. And so it's, and here's the thing, Poppy, there are so many mushrooms out there that like we've only like scratched the tip of the iceberg with the mushrooms that we're using, particularly in veterinary practice, but also like what we know about mushrooms. And so tremella is kind of a up and coming, I think it's going to be a real superstar. And like, I would consider tremella for any kind of skin issue. And, if anybody like has any information or has been using any of these mushrooms, like reach out to me. Like, again, because there's no, we're working as fast as we can to get some clinical studies going, et cetera, but we're also in the middle of launching a product line. So
I love that. Well, I love the fact that Real Mushroom is standing behind their products and doing some science behind it and not just hopping on everybody else's science, because people can change their data, it can be adulterated. Yeah. So Amanda is asking, if you make the bone broth from your powder, can you freeze the bone broth and still have it be an active component?
I don't see why not. Yeah.
Okay. Good question, fine. Amanda. Maureen is asking, she has a 15-pound dog, and I don't know if you can actually do dosages or not. So what would be the recommendation on a small dog?
Well, it depends. So one of the wonderful things about working with Dr. Rob Silver with real mushrooms is that he came up with dosing guidelines based on the beta glucan content of mushrooms. So for instance, if you use our real mushrooms for pets product, there's dosage guidelines based on weight. And so for a 15-pound dog, I would give 1 capsule a day of any of our mushrooms. And that would be a good starting dose. And, and again, the wonderful thing about mushrooms is there's a very, very wide dosage range. Like if you give a little more, it's not going to be a problem. If you give a little less, as long as you get some in every day,
Okay.
that's the best thing. Yeah.
Good to know. And it might be a little more potent if you add a little hot water to it.
Well, they're already hot water extracted. So
Okay.
yeah. So
You don't need to fortify it with a little kick.
no, you
And
don't.
I'm reading people's, if a dog is healthy, will it be beneficial to give mushrooms as a preventative measure, and what would be a good choice for a toy breed? So what would you practice prevention with? Oh, and we really haven't talked about the awesomeness of beta glucan. So maybe that's your prevention angle. I don't know. Beta glucan's the bomb.
Yeah, I mean, beta glucans are probably the most popular, component in mushrooms. It's the most studied, and beta glucans, they just they support the immune system in so many ways. To answer this person's question with their toy dog, like a general preventative, I love the idea of the synergy. Like I was saying, in the real mushrooms line, it would be the 5 defenders, which has the 5 different mushrooms, and each of these mushrooms has. They're all immune modulating. They're all anti-inflammatory. They all have their similar qualities, but then each one has its own specific thing that it does. Like I was describing the reishi having that antihistamine effect. Reishi is also great for calming. Wonderful. Reishi is a great mushroom if you have a dog with anxiety or behavior issues. It's a great mushroom to try. The shiitake is, shiitake is cardioprotective. Chaga is great for the gut. So if you're taking that combination of 5 mushrooms as a preventative, it just, like I said, it's going to kind of cover the whole body. Give a general,
I love that.
general immune support. Yeah.
Well, and that's the whole point of the 5 defending, right? The name leads to all the defenses that it's working on. Is that true?
Yeah. I mean, that's why definitely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I should say the 5 defenders is also in our mushroom immune chews. So we have 2 chew products. We have the Relax and Immune and the Mushroom Immune Chews. And I'll just pull it up here. It's in a base of the 5 defenders blend. So if you have a pet that you can't get the powders in, or like they won't eat their food with the powders in it, or you can't get the capsules in, the chews can come to the rescue in many cases. And so our chews have the 5 defenders: ashwagandha, astragalus, blueberry powder, acerola extract, and olive leaf. So this is a really great immune support product. And then
you get your herbal remedies mixed in with your mushrooms. So it's kind of a whole health system.
Exactly.
On that sounds powerful. I love that. That's exciting.
Yeah. And then we have the Relax. My favorite is the Relax Chews, which is a combination of lion's mane and reishi. As I mentioned, the reishi is really good for calming and behavior, and lion's mane is also very good for the brain, any kind of and anxiety. So it's got the lion's mane, the reishi. It's also got valerian root powder, taurine, L-theanine, tryptophan. Doc Rob put a little catnip in it, his favorite herb, lemon balm powder, and passion flower powder. So the chews have been really good for people that they just can't seem to, I mean, dogs, and cats can be challenging. Cats are just challenging in general, sometimes getting anything in. But
So what I do with cats is I actually have my clients dust a little bit on them, and then when they clean their bodies, if they're healthy enough to clean their bodies, they clean it off and ingest the
oh,
mushroom
that's
at
a
the
great
same time.
idea. I love
So
that.
that's my cat
Yeah. Oh
hack.
my goodness. Now, you know what? That's a good pearl poppy. That's a good one. I've heard a lot of different ones, but yeah, I'm surprised I haven't heard that one yet, or that, yeah, I hadn't thought of it. So thank you.
Yeah, probably, if you put it on their paws. Sorry, you guys, my Wi-Fi is a little jacked up. So I'm like moving it around. I can see on my screen's
Yeah.
like freezing a little bit. But if you put a little bit on their paw, they're going to want it off of them, and
Yeah.
they'll get rid of it that way.
And
Yeah. Plus dermal absorption
I love
on
it.
that.
I also wanted to mention, like, for those of you that are curious to try our products, or maybe you're using our products, or we've just started. Like, I'm really excited about where we're going. Like, we created these chews to give pet parents options. And if you don't like the chews for whatever reason, we've got the single mushroom powders, with dosages for pets. We have the reishi, 5 defenders, and the turkey tail. And now we just came out also with the lion's mane. But we're going to be coming out with some powdered blends. So if maybe you're not a big fan of the chews for whatever reason, I've gotten some people that are not huge fans of some of the you have to hold a chew together. It's very, it becomes very difficult when you're making these things you have to make them something that a dog or cat will eat. So it has to smell good, and it has to hold together, etc. And sometimes I think we did a really good job. But we're also going to be coming out with powders that are combinations of herbs and mushrooms coming out in the future.
So I have the powder samples, and I'm having so much fun playing with them. And I noticed I started the turkey tail with my dog and the lion's mane for my horses, because my horses have neurologic history. And so I wanted to see how they were feeling. And my dog was psycho. He was feeling really good on the turkey tail, just like running all around. I was like, it's gotten into you. And then I was like, oh, it's that. And I've used mushrooms on him before, not your mushrooms, and never saw this surge of enthusiasm from him. So I was having fun with that.
And I want to hear feedback on your horse. I really hope that the lion's mane can be supportive for your horse's issues. And like I said, I'm always wanting to hear feedback from people on what's working with their pets, because that's, I'm working with veterinarians all over the country, teaching them about mushrooms. And I'm going to be speaking at AHVMA in September. So the American Holistic Veterinary Medical Association, at their annual meeting, I'm speaking on 3 topics related to mushrooms, which I'm terrible. Like I alternate between being excited and questioning my life choices, but
you'll be great. You'll be absolutely great.
I'm terrified. I mean, because I'm like, these are like, there are so many people know so much more about mushrooms than I do. And I'm so grateful that I get to learn from them. And, I just hope that my enthusiasm, will inspire people to really consider mushrooms for their pets. Yeah.
It's so exciting. Thank you for hopping on today, you guys. If you have any questions in the chat, put them. So on the Zoom, we have my membership, the Holistic Animal Insights membership. As members, they get to be on live with our guests. So if you guys want to ask questions, feel free to either put it in the chat or unmute yourselves and turn your videos on if you want to do that. And people are thanking you. They're so grateful for your information. Can I throw one last thing in?
I was just looking at our little Zoom chat, and somebody asked about best mushroom for an elderly dog. Lion's mane, lion's mane, lion's mane.
Okay.
lion's mane and canine cognitive function or doggy dementia. I can't stress enough, like if you have a dog that's getting, or maybe on Rimadyl or something, because it supports the gut and it's also so good for cognitive function. I have never heard so much positive feedback in all my years working in veterinary medicine than I have for lion's mane and cognition. And it's actually one of the papers I'll be presenting at AHVMA is feedback from working with a group of veterinarians with a lion's mane product. And we actually started working on it for degenerative myelopathy, and it worked okay for that, but phenomenal results for canine cognitive function. So for an older dog, even proactively, I've got Scruffy on lion's mane every day. She's 9 years old.
That's so great.
Yeah. Anyway, that's it.
Well, and I love the look of lion's mane too. The chat's kind of blowing up. So Gina Janai wants to know, for joint issues on an elderly dog, what would you recommend?
Yeah. So mushrooms would not be my first choice for joint issues. All mushrooms are anti-inflammatory. So, something like a product like the 5 Defenders, which is the combination of 5 mushrooms, are great, but I would be using Boswellia. I'd be using a bioavailable turmeric. I'd be adding bone broth. There are a lot of green lip mussels. There are a lot of better things for joint issues than mushrooms. And so I would add mushrooms to just kind of support all of that.
Okay. And Joni, is there a reason why you wouldn't use mushrooms?
Honestly, no. My only regret is that I didn't find mushrooms sooner, I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got like 20 or 30 more years I can be obsessed with mushrooms, which I feel like I've only just started with all of this, but yeah, no, I can't think of a single reason. Having said that, like anything can cause anything. There's going to be the rare dog or cat that's going to have a reaction. I actually have a veterinarian has a dog with cancer, and she gives 1 turkey tail capsule and the dog breaks with diarrhea. I've never heard of that happening ever. And this is a lab. It's a large dog, and every time she's tried like 3 or 4 times to add the turkey tail, and every time this dog breaks with diarrhea. So now we're using reishi with this dog, and the dog is not having diarrhea, but that would be the only reason not to. If your dog has some sort of gastric distress or some, an allergy, just like you can have an allergy to anything. But other than that,
so that's what I was going to say is, you guys, I'm actually allergic to mushrooms. And so I wasn't sure if it was mushrooms or the mycelium, but I was in a moldy home. So I have this mycotoxin sensitivity. And so even just cracking open mushrooms makes me just like my nose just pours. And so I have to be careful, but all my animals eat it. Yes. I just kind of shake the powder. So know that it is a fungus, and it's a fungi, a fungi, not a fungi. And
it's our fungal friend. Yes.
And so if you have been plummeted with mycotoxins, then it might be a little bit of a sensitivity issue. So always proceed with.
Some people it can be helpful. So it really is a individual basis. And I don't know enough about the human side of that. Like we have a naturopath that works with Dr. Mason Brissett, who could address that issue a little better. And we'd be maybe happy to help, if it's something you wanted to explore, Poppy.
It's interesting because, well, and mushrooms, like you said, are like little cleaning agents. So it could be the wrong mushroom, or it could be just less mushroom, or even maybe a homeopathic version of it could be a really nice option.
Possibly.
So I'm like the gamest person, like I've tried everything. not everything. Like I don't do psychotropic type.
Yeah.
I'm
Well-
not doing shrooms, you guys. I just don't do shrooms.
Well, on that note, I will say that, just to go really out there, I think there's I think in the future, there's going to be microdosing for dogs and cats. There's going to be, there are benefits to behavior for very, very minute doses of psilocybin mushroom. And I know of clinical studies that are being prepared right now around that. And I think that just like with people, helping them with PTSD and depression and all kinds of things, it's going to be crossing over into the veterinary world very soon, especially as psilocybin becomes legal. So it's definitely,
That's so fascinating. Yeah.
In
Oh,
10
wow.
years,
That's pretty cool.
It's going to be a treatment plan. Yeah.
So we're a little ahead of the science right now.
Well, yeah. Well, yeah.
A little bit.
A little bit.
bit.
Well, we're actually in veterinary, I mean, there are so many clinical studies that are needed to really, I mean, every day, like I have it silenced, but we get reviews. Like every time a review comes in for a Real Mushroom products, I get pinged, and my phone is just pinging all day with people like talking about the benefits of them and their dog and this and that, but again, these are all anecdotal. Like until we have the clinical studies, the science to back it up, and get more and more veterinarians on board. And they're coming. Many veterinarians are using mushrooms. But yeah, the more science, the more studies, the more validation, the better.
That's so exciting. How do we get a hold of you? Do you want people to like reach out to you? What's our next step if we want to look into Real Mushrooms more?
Yeah, you can. I will type my, it's Joni at realmushrooms.com, Joni. And I'll type it in the chat here for the Zoom people, and you can type it on Facebook.
Okay. Joni at Real Mushrooms. And you take people's emails just like that.
Sure, why not? I hope I don't regret.
I know. I'm like, are you sure about
Don't
this?
blame me or anything, but yeah, I'll do my best
Doc-
to answer your emails. But understand that I can't answer. I'm not going to be able to give you, if you email me and you're like, this is my dog and they've got this and what do I do? And this is the lab work. You're going to I can't do that. It wouldn't be ethical for me to answer those questions.
I am trying to, okay. Joni at realmushrooms.com.
Yeah.
Okay. You guys be nice. Be nice to Joni.
You can also go to realmushrooms.com, our website, and you can if you click on pets, you can look at the pet products. If you click on learn, I just wrote a blog on lion's mane for dogs, and it's on the Real Mushrooms website. I'm in the middle of writing another paper on why you should use mushrooms with your pet. Dr. Silver has written a number of wonderful articles on mushrooms, and he also did an amazing webinar that if you reach out to me, I'm happy to send that to you. Again, he's the GOAT. He's the greatest. I'm the student.
Oh, I'm so excited. Yeah, I would love to hang out with Dr. Silver here on this Cancer-Free Canine page.
And I'm sure he'd love to hang out with you. Yeah.
Awesome.
And he's
into the CBD. He's way into CBD too, gosh. Right?
He's like the foremost authority. Like he literally wrote the book on cannabis and CBD for animals. Like he's just written a book. And he knows so much. And, by the way, CBD and mushrooms are like peanut butter and jelly. They go together so well. And there is a synergy and entourage effect that happens between the two of them. So yeah, I encourage you to get Doc Silver on to talk about both of those.
Awesome. And Debbie, I already asked that question. No to pregnant mares, dogs, bitches,
Yeah.
no to pregnant bitches. It's
These
just
days.
too risky. We don't have enough science behind it. So for today, it's a no, but maybe later we'll know better.
Yeah.
And Joni, thank you for your time. I did put in the very beginning of the chat, you guys, all the contact info on Facebook. I will load the PDF. Thank you for providing us with all this information,
Oh,
Joni.
you're welcome. And you can
Is
see there's Scrappy in the background. She's like,
I could see him
like,
hopping in and
looking
out.
out
I
the
was like, there he
window.
goes. There he's
she's like, okay,
back.
Mom, it's time to go walking.
Thank you very much. It was very informative.
Oh, good. I'm
Joni.
so glad.
And
You guys-
I always use your products, so I know they're really good.
Oh, good. And
You
thank
guys go ahead and
for-
unmute yourself and say thank you to Joni. Right on, Joni. Okay.
Thank you.
And
That was fun.
Joni.
Oh, you're welcome. You're
Awesome.
welcome. Nice seeing you all on the side there. As I was
Thank you,
like,
Joni.
I appreciate it.
Take
Poppy,
care,
that was a
you
lot of
guys.
fun.